Win big in 2021 with RotoBaller.com's MMA Premium Pass. Are you ready to dominate? RotoBaller's premium DFS package includes exclusive tools, DFS cheat sheets, research stations, our lineup optimizer, and so much more to help you win big. For a limited time, get your MMA Premium Pass for 50% off. Use my promo code Knuckler, KNUCKLER, for another 10% discount. So just visit rotoballer.com/radio, sign up today, and start rotoballing like a boss. And what's up, everybody? This is Brady Grove with another interlude episode of Tap That, RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. And with me today, I've been wanting to talk to him for a while. We finally have him here. From the Ultimate Fighter 29 middleweight cast, Alaska's Aaron Phillips. Aaron, how you doing today, man?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. You're up in Alaska right now?
No, I actually left Alaska and moved down to Houston on advice from Ricky.
Oh, really? So, all right, what's that been like?
It's been great. The weather's a lot better here, and there's a lot more access to gyms where compared to where I was at. Yeah, it's great. I'm loving it. Now that I'm used to the heat and the humidity, it's not too bad.
Yeah, God, that's going to about as most drastic of climate differences as you can within the United States.
Oh yeah, it was definitely, I took a lot of adapting to, but man, I've been outside all the time, so it's not too bad anymore. But because I adapted pretty quick, just being outside all the time, making myself suffer in the humidity.
So, I mean, you're a guy that's used to having a very unorthodox training and background, as compared to other fights. As you've described it in Alaska, as not having the gyms and the training partners of other locations and the options some other guys have. And now, off advice from Ricky Tercios, you're now down in Houston. So what are the differences? What are things you like? What are things that you kind of miss about, the way you were training in Alaska?
Yeah, it's so there's the big difference is obviously training partners and gyms. And that's to me, that's this is awesome. I have all these access to everything. I just go to right down the street and there's a gym there, and I'm like, all right, cool. And it's been great, but what I do miss about Alaska and stuff, and the way I trained up there, because a lot of it was by myself, and just you have to really just get into that darkness and just get after it. And yeah, it's a lot different though. I still find myself trying to go out and do things on my own. I'll go to do weird workouts out on the sidewalk or something.
That part never leaves you.
Yeah. I'm still there's a big gym over there. I can lift weights. I'll just go outside and do some push-ups or bear crawl across the grass. Who knows?
So is that something that you opened up a little bit to in being in the Ultimate Fighter house?
Yeah. Just kind of I really just kind of embraced where I came from. And before I was man, it's such a burden to have to do this and learn this on my own and do this on my own. But I mean, now that I'm kind of looking back, I'm I had it kind of good. It's just the lack of training partners and coaching was the only thing. But the workouts and stuff it was all great.
So I want to get to stuff that came before the Ultimate Fighter 29 a little later, but let's say right before, when you first had the opportunity to hop on that season of the show, how did that opportunity arise? And was it something that you maybe had some questions about whether you would actually want to do that?
Yeah, I was I was up in Kotzebue at the time working, and it was cold, and we ended up I was just kind of working, and it was a pretty heavy COVID time, so everything was kind of closed down. And my management, Dodge Sports, they asked me if I wanted to be on the show. They're like, hey, you want to do this? And I was like, sure, why not? Because I've heard of the show. I've never actually watched it, but I've heard of it and I know about it and stuff like that. And I know a few guys that were on there from Alaska, so I was just sign me up, let's do it, let's see if I get on. And I ended up, eventually making it. After they tried doing the show 3 or 4 times, and they had to cancel and reschedule because of COVID. And yeah, so it was crazy for me to be like picked to be on to be on there, because I was just like, man, going from a guy who just taking what he can, any fight he can. It's like, this is your opponent? I'm like, I don't know who it is, whatever, yes.
Well, I mean, to speak about Dodge Sports, and I don't just say this because so many people that I interview on this show are Dodge Sports clients. I say this because, like, this is just rung true over the last couple years. They get their fighters fantastic opportunities, whether it's fighting on UFC Fight Pass or being the Ultimate Fighter or the Contender Series, as we just saw, which has been just due to Vicious. Fighters with Dodge Sports have had like some excellent opportunities presented to them over the last couple of years.
Oh yeah, they really take care of us. They really they really break their backs to make sure we are taken care of, and just have the best opportunities we can for our careers. And it's a fun process with them. So I can't ask for a better company to be with.
Well, it's interesting, like, that you described as a fun process. Do you hear of other fighters who have, some of the opposite experiences with some of their management?
I've heard some things, but I mean, most guys I've talked to, management never really comes up too much. But I mean, I've heard of people like, just like, man, they're not doing anything for me. They kind of just put me on the shelf, and I was like, man, with Dodge, I haven't felt that, or like any scare of that or nothing. So it's been good.
It's just interesting, like, in an era where we're seeing more and more, like, multiplying exponentially the opportunities that there are for prospects from like any place in the world right now. So it's like career management has almost gone up in importance because there's so many other like steps that you can take to get to a bunch of different places that you want to be.
Yeah, it's a lot to handle. Like if without a management team, I don't see how I would ever do it. I have hard enough time posting anything on my social medias. So without a management team, I wouldn't be able to do like anything. I'd be just like, just sign the dotted line. I don't know. As long as I don't have to talk to nobody, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't know what to do.
So, like you said, you were familiar with the Ultimate Fighter, but you hadn't like watched it before, really. And because I've been going back through a lot of the old seasons. I'm through like season 9 right now. And so were there aspects of being on what is, it's a fighting competition, and it's supposed to decide like who are the top prospects at a certain weight class, but at the end of the day, that's a reality show. So were there details about it being a reality show that kind of hit you by surprise once you were there?
Yeah, it was. I was expecting to be a little more, because I've heard like all like the horror stories of the other seasons. I would peeing on stuff, and I'm like, man, if someone, I swear to God, if someone pees on something of mine, I'm killing them. And like when we got in there, like everybody's really cool, all the guys are really cool, and it was kind of like weird to think like, man, they're just watching you all the time. Like you have a mic on, you don't have a mic on, and they're like, hey, go get your mic, and it's you see all the things behind the scenes, everything going on, and then now it's like makes it weird to watch other reality shows, like anything, like it goes any reality show. I'm like, yeah, that must be staged or something, like the way that's set up and the way they're bringing it up is just kind of weird to think about. There's so much going on. Yeah, I mean, I went into it kind of thinking more it was gonna be more reality show than actual like tournament, just based off of what I heard and what I've seen from other. It's more like, oh, they want to see you guys be crazy and acting fools, and that's kind of what I was expecting. But we went in there, and it was really professionally done, and it was great. Met a lot of good guys in there.
It was, I mean, definitely, it was one of the more professional, lesser drama seasons that I've ever seen. And I think there's a few reasons for that. I think I think there's an era where people are a lot more in tune with, like, you have to be careful with what you say always. There's no time where you're not being like, watched if you're in, a certain realm and you want your name to be out there. I think people are a lot more conscious of that now than they used to be in some of the previous seasons. And fighters come into the Ultimate Fighter now with already a following. There are people that, have big Instagram followings already. And the Ultimate Fighter, may even produce less viewers than followers that they have. I don't know. That there's that case to it, but this was a season that was carried 100% by the quality of fights every week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. All the fights were amazing. I was going through, and I was like at the edge of my seat, like, oh man, it was just it was wild. Just being there was crazy, and watching them live, and feeling it with everybody. It was definitely a good time. But yeah, it seems like they did cut out a lot of stuff from the show. But I mean, that's just because the fights were all just bangers, so that they couldn't really add too much, And to the victor goes the spoils. So if you win, you get more camera time, of course.
It's just one of those things where, like, I've seen so much of the Ultimate Fighter through the years, and there's some seasons where you're like, it seems like not a lot of people are getting into fights over who drank their milk in the fridge this season. And then you watch a season where a lot of that's happening. It's like, can I just fast forward through all this? This is not what I watched this show for. Some of the fights are ridiculous.
Yeah. It was cool. I like watching it and seeing they're really just showing the athlete side of us, people are just getting to know us, our backstories, and then they get to see how we prepare for fights and going into those fights. So that's pretty cool that they did it that way, and they didn't show us getting mad about who's not doing dishes and stuff.
That's at least 8 seasons. But no, I mean, it was a much better window than other seasons into fighters' lives and backgrounds individually. And I think your story is one that really stands out among a lot of those stories, because I mean, one, just like Hawaii and just other just like Australia can be, in New Zealand, Alaska has its own flavor of fighter that comes out of the state. And then you really raised eyebrows, especially of people immediately once your first match was set in the house. People were skeptical of, I learned Brazilian jiu-jitsu off of YouTube. That's not something a lot of fighters are used to hearing. And so I mean, did you feel like people were overlooked, or did you feel like people really didn't know a lot about each other when she got in the house?
Yeah, I actually was pretty fortunate, because they gave the list out. We were in quarantine at the time. They gave that list out on that fight card, and they ended up I saw the list. Everybody saw the list, and everybody's going through watching film on each other, seeing who we are, and trying to Instagram them and stuff. And everybody, when they looked me up, they looked up the other Aaron Phillips from who's at 135 in the UFC. So there's a few guys that are there are a few guys what? He's coming in, moving up to middleweight. What's he doing? So that's pretty cool.
Come on,
whenever
guys.
he has a fight, whenever he has a fight, I get tagged in his stuff. So it's always pretty funny. But that's how I fall in under the radar.
Yeah. Oh my God. When they're that thinking about that, but I mean, this was a really interesting group of middleweights in this Ultimate Fighter season, and Brian Battle was a lot of fun to watch. Team Bowcatcher, it was I don't know about you, I thought it was a real shame that Trayshawn Gore didn't get to participate in the finale. I thought that matchup was going to be electric between him and Brian. So what were some of the greatest benefits that you realized now that the show is over, of being able to train with some of those guys, and not just the teammates, but living in the house with some of those guys that were on Team Ortega?
All the benefits of it are I could go almost anywhere now, because everybody from the house is from a different part of the United States. If I'm hey, I want to go visit there, we always have we all take care of each other. I think we'd all take care of each other and let each other train, with one another. And that's what's pretty cool about it. And it's just staying in contact with all the guys, and yeah, in the houses we were really close knit. All the Ortega guys might have been too, but we didn't see each other very often because of practices and stuff. And we were all the Volt guys. We were we were all pretty close, and we hung out every day. There's 4 or 5 of us that would always be playing chess or playing cards or something, jumped in the pool. They actually a few of the guys taught me how to swim while we were in the house.
You never learned to swim outside in Alaska?
No, not the best. I could float for a little bit and doggy paddle across the pool, but that's about it.
So, I mean, Team Volk, this has happened so many times throughout the history of the Ultimate Fighter that every time there starts to be trash talk about it, it's don't do that. We've seen this reverse so many times, but Team Volk had a rough start, and then a great comeback. And it seemed like everybody on Team Volk at the end of the show left with a lot of electricity. So like, how would you describe, like, the value of having a coach like Alexander Volkanovski when you guys were so tight knit throughout the whole season as a team?
Yeah, just having Volk there as a coach, and the whole crew, like Joe, Frank, Big Wood, and Craig, and Colby too. It was awesome. They would always like kind of like pick you up anytime you're feeling down or anything. Just they'd tease you a little bit and make you forget about it. And they kept you going, moving forward and stuff. And once we left the house, we left like we left confident and ready to go. And just like, hey, all of us were just looking for another fight instead of leaving the house. And he's just a great guy. He has the energy. He trains with you. All of them train with you. And they're always making you keep your head up, and it's it's just a real positive way to go about things, and it felt good. We felt good throughout the whole show, regardless of our first losses and our the last one, and we went through it pretty good.
He seems like a really good guy. Like, there's some people that seem like good guys for TV, but Volk seems like just a legitimately great guy.
Yeah, he took care of us. He definitely did. Like, if we're cutting weight, he would, he'd be right there in the sauna the whole time with us, talking to us, making sure we're all right, and giving us, like rubbing ice cubes on us and stuff, kind of make it more, just more painless. And he's always there for us. He, got us out of the house. It was just cool. He's a cool guy.
So you're fighting the house. You drew a really, really tough matchup against Andre Petrosky, a guy who's an extremely talented wrestler, a guy who's been on the UFC's radar for a long time. It didn't go your way, but what takeaways did you have from the fight, and what things were you happy with? What things did you come away really wanting to work on, and what place did it leave you psychologically afterwards?
Yeah, so that fight obviously didn't go the way I wanted. It was, I was just like, what, I haven't wrestled going into the place. I just like, I was training in Colorado for a bit, like a few weeks before, and I did a lot of boxing and stuff, like a lot of like on the feet stuff. And that's where I was feeling good. And, watching my previous fights before, I'm like, well, I mean, I could be better. But this one, I was like, well, I did a lot. I felt and looked a lot better than I thought I did. And, didn't really get caught with anything. Got him with a few leg kicks and stuff like that. I was hitting him hard. And, yeah, it was just not having that wrestling experience for so long against guys my size, or just anybody who really put up with too much resistance, and it was getting that kind of high level wrestler again in such a long time. It kind of just did play a big factor. And I came out of it stronger, I think, because I got to as soon as the loss was over, I wasn't banged up too bad or nothing. My ankle's a little sore, but from the kicks, and I went right back to training and rolling with like Craig and stuff. It was we just went right back to it. You're just like, hey, I'm here to get better. Even if I lost, I'm going to take advantage of the whole situation, get all the practices, and learn as much as I can before I leave, and take the most I can from this.
That's the crazy thing. Throughout all the seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, there's, you can go through every season and identify, almost 5 to 8 guys that go on to have fantastic careers. Where, it's results all over the place. Melvin Gillard is one of the first that I think, like, one of the earliest examples. But now in The Ultimate Fight, people, especially now that, people stay in the house the whole time and train for the entire season, people, no matter what, come out of that house much different, much better, and much, they're different versions of themselves afterward.
Yeah, I would say, man, just the being on TV, having people watch you all the time, that freaks you out. Not having cameras, and then like, it's the mind. I think it's like the mindset of the coaches too that kind of really just brush off on it, and you leave with that kind of mindset as well. Like all of us left feeling confident and feeling good, and with Volk as our coach, and I think that plays a big factor in a lot of fighters who come out and are successful.
Well, I think there's a lot of fighters that think that they're ready for the UFC or for Bellator or what have you, any elite promotion, because of the results of their previous professional career. And I think that it's really possible that a lot of fighters don't think that, hitting the big show or, having an opportunity like that will affect them psychologically, but I think it does a lot more often than people think. And so it's got to be helpful to have something like the Ultimate Fighter, where it's a taste of the exposure and the focus that will be on you, at that level.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's I mean, the way I thought of it too was like, I was like, man, I've done intensive camps, like intensive wrestling camps, all grown up through high school every summer. So I mean, this was basically the same exact thing for me. I just went in there and I was like, this is where I get better. I mean, regardless if I win or lose, I'm gonna get better and I'm gonna come out stronger.
So before the Ultimate Fighter, you had the fight against Jason Flowers in Alaska in December of 2019, and then the fight against Colin Hugbody December of 2020 in Cage Fury. So am I correct in believing that there was probably some difficulty fighting in Alaska during COVID?
Oh yeah. During COVID, there was no fights, nothing. Everything was closed down. And then yeah, the fight against Hugbody came up. That was a short notice one. I was scheduled for a fight before that, and I did a weight cut, and about
Micah Graf?
yeah, and that one ended up canceling, and I got the offer for Hugbody, so I was like, oh, all right, but that was already after I like put on all that weight I just cut, and I was like, oh damn, I'm right back up to 210, and so I ended up cutting that weight too, and I went into that fight. I didn't look my best. I felt fine, but I mean, when I watched the fight, I was like, oh, I didn't really look like myself, but it is what it is. I got a fight though, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Cage Fury was really good about that. There were people from Canada, where in Canada had a lot of problems putting on events naturally, but there were a lot of people from Canada that made their way down to Pennsylvania consistently through 2020 and got fights in Cage Fury. But that was on short notice, and after you were already because most of the first 4 or 5 some fights of your career were light heavyweight. You moved down to middleweight, and then you went back up, and then had to go back down for Colin Hugbody.
Yeah, it was so yeah, I started at 205, and I did like, I think my first two, I think 2 or 3, my first 3 fights, and I ended up going down because there's one guy I fought, and man, he connected with a few hits, and I was like, oh, this is what getting hit at 205 feels like. So I ended up going down, and because I didn't feel very big at 205, so I ended up going down to 185. Man, I loved it, and it was just like, I usually walk around about 205, 210, and that's like when I'm like comfortable, and I'm just like, yeah, just that's my natural weight. Let's leave it at that. And yeah, I ended up getting down to about, I was like 87, a couple days before this event, and then it got canceled, and I was like, oh, Thanksgiving time, and ended up getting back up to 210 within it was a couple weeks, and Hugbody got offered, so I was like, oh, all right, cool. And this was my first fight out of Alaska, actually. So I ended up taking it, and I knew he was a tough guy, and I was, I'm just gonna go out there and get after it, see how I kind of what my level is at. If I win, perfect. If I lose, I need to just at least go out there and get a good showing, and see how far I am, their level is compared to mine, from someone who is signed in the UFC versus me not.
That's the thing. Like, take the Hugbody and the Petrosky results. Okay, those are 2 fighters that have been on the UFC radar for a long time. They have been on the Contender Series. They're excellent prospects. And in each fight, even though the results didn't go your way, I think that there was measurable, viewable improvement in each fight. And I think, what was I looking for here? Improvement. And I think each fight answered a lot of questions that people would naturally have about you at each stage.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me explain that a little bit, because that didn't come together as cleanly as I hope. It's like, with Hugbody being your first fight out of Alaska, it's like, all right, well, let's see how Aaron Phillips stacks up against a guy like Colin Hugbody in a promotion like Cage Fury, a guy like Colin Hugbody we've seen on some of these other prospect showcase platforms. And as you said, there were a lot of things that you did really well against Hugbody, and it looked like you felt really, really good as well. And then Petrosky, that answers some of the questions that you would have about, how do you face an elite wrestler like Petrosky? How do you stack up? And, I would think, even with the results being the way they went, you had to have been happy with the progression looking backward.
Yeah. When I watched my Ultimate Fighter fight on that episode, I was against Petrosky. I was like, man, I'm moving a lot better. I'm looking good. I'm getting just out of the way of those hits, and and I was trying to fire back, but both of us are kind of playing that distance game and still figuring it out. And I thought it looked great. I was like, if it stayed on the feet, I probably could have, if I was able to defend those takedowns, I probably could have pulled something out, and at least bring it into a third, or win it. And it was just unfortunate that I didn't have the wrestling. It was that first week. We get in the house, and you're still doing media stuff while you're, so you're getting like one or two practices, or you get two practices usually, but you get the one practice some days because you have media half the day. And it's like, all right, so I was ready for the fight, but I could have been more ready. I could have got a little bit more wrestling and get like more work with Ryder and Frank. That would have been great. And I think it would have been a different story if I just had that little bit of work in.
So what is your reach exactly? Because Tapology says not any, which I think that they should say unknown, because there's not no reach. What is your reach exactly? Because like if I had to estimate, I'd say that like it's probably much longer than average at 185. The way I'm seeing it.
Yeah, it's like 76. I think it was 76 is what I put on the show when I measured it before the show. Yeah, I think it was 76.
I mean, especially even in your like some of the fights at 205, it seemed like some fighters have a reach advantage. Their arms are longer, but for some guys, it is not an advantage. Like I used to love watching Stefan Struve, but that's a guy that had a reach advantage in almost every fight. But it was really hard for him to use that to keep people outside in the range that he preferred. You use your reach really well. Would you credit some of that to the boxing work that you've been doing?
Yeah. A lot of stuff I do, drills I do, or I try to like work on just keeping the distance, because I don't want to get hit and break my nose. I like my nose, so a lot of it is working with my brother and stuff. He's my older brother. He boxes a lot, and he really loves it, and he's a lot more mobile. Like he's more of like a mobile guy, and yeah, I just try to you got to keep your distance against faster people like that. I'm not the fastest, so it just kind of came naturally, I think, just from defending myself and like, all right, how can I land? I don't care if I land a lot, as long as I land every time. Just shoot just snipe it, boom. And that's yeah, I think it just played a big factor, just boxing with him all the time, and working with him.
And at least early in your professional career, it seemed like you utilized a lot of not necessarily unorthodox strikes, but definitely some unorthodox movement in that front arm. There was a lot of movement and deception there. It seemed like, and it seemed like everything was coiled for power. And you saw with what you did to a lot of your opponent's legs throughout your professional career. So, I mean, is there anything in your background that led to some of that being characteristics of your stand-up style?
I think it's just like when I have my I put my hand out and I'm just kind of pawing at them, and that's kind of how I'm just gauging the distance. And if and what's nice about it is like you could throw that little snappy jab from there. It's not going to hurt him, but it'll keep him away. And the kicks, I remember, I think it was my Jesse Hall fight, my first fight at 185. I started I was kicking the bag, and I was like, oh, I'll see how hard, I'll just do it as hard as I could, a few times. And I just slammed it a few times, and it was loud. It sounded like a shotgun on the bag. And I was like, oh, maybe I could throw kicks kind of hard, But I mean, I didn't think anything highly of it or anything of it at the time. And I went into that fight, and I was kicking it, and just, man, it felt kind of gross. If I could feel my leg kind of going into the meat there. And after that, now it's like, I have a lot of success with it. I mean, there are a lot of repercussions after the fights. I'm always like, oh, I can barely walk, and gonna need some crutches for a couple days. And but I mean, a lot of it was just, I think it was watching Justin Gaethje too when he first started out. He's kicking, he kicked so hard. It's I was kind of like, yeah, that's a cool way to bring people down, is leg kicks. And I just kind of went that route for a little bit. I had that fight, the Jesse Hall fight. I pretty much won with leg kicks. And then the Flowers fight, that was a leg kick. And then I had a amateur Muay Thai fight shortly after that. after the Jesse Hall fight, and that one was leg kicks too. And
it's interesting because I mean, this is an era where calf kicks are changing fights. I mean, 180 degrees on a dime. I thought the McGregor Poirier, I thought the rematch between the two, I thought McGregor was really tuning him up on the feet, but you knew that there was a running clock on how long that leg was going to survive those kicks. And you're a guy who we've seen change the course of fights significantly with leg kicks. And it's just now you see any fight the way it's going. A guy can be bloody and battered and bruised and falling, but one kick lands right, and you can see it on the front guy's leg, and the fight is never the same after that.
oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely an underutilized weapon because I mean I know a lot of people the way they fight is there's not a lot of defense to it anymore, not as much as there should be, and just because you have to focus on so many different things in MMA, I think. And I try to take advantage of the situation. If a guy's not checking, I'm gonna launch one. And then if you get like kicked just right in the calf or the thigh, then it's hard. You can't get any power off. You can't get your speeds down. You can't move for a little bit, and it's it makes a nightmare for a fight.
So Alaska FC, I think just a little bit ago got going again with event. I believe the event was held outside on UFC Fight Pass, and it was. Am I correct that this wasn't that long ago that they got started again? It was outside.
Yeah, I think they're doing outside events now. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm sure you have to be selective seasonally about when you hold events outside in Alaska, but
Yeah.
That's just a great promotion to be able to watch on UFC Fight Pass. Because I feel like not that long ago it was like, oh look, this guy's fighting in Alaska FC, that's interesting. Now it's like, and another prospect out of Alaska FC. Like the reputation of Alaska FC is really growing strong. And part of that has to be exposure that UFC Fight Pass offers, but it's one of those organizations that definitely breeds a distinct flavor of prospect. So, what was your experience like, in all the professional fights you had in Alaska FC?
They were all great. When I was fighting there, they had them in the Alaska Airlines Center before COVID, and yeah, it was always a lot of fun. You meet a lot of good people. You get to see everybody, and a lot of the guys fight all the time. Like they're just fighting all the time, and they just do it because they love it. They're like, hey, let's just go out and throw. Let's get some knockouts, and so you're there with good energy. Everybody's it's just that fight energy, and you have a lot of family, and because Alaska's small, I know a lot of people there. So that when I went out and fought, all my friends were like, hey, let's go out and watch Aaron, and see half the stands are people or 3/4 of the people out there is people you've met sometime in your life. And yeah, it was always great. It was always good to me. I always liked it. I think there's a few times, there's always some funny things that happen too. like people will be up in the stands when their fight's about to happen. They're getting announced and they're up standing in the stands with their friends, stuff like that. And people not showing up until like 5 minutes before the fight because they're getting haircuts. And it's stuff like that. And it's kind of like gave me more of like a laid back, like going to a fight, I don't want to be all tense, it helped me relax a lot going into fights like that. And now like when I'm going out there, I'm not overhyped, and I got my heart rate under control. I feel good. I think it's just the way they go about their system. I mean, well, the fighters up there, I guess, not I wouldn't say AFC, but the way that the fighters up there like laid back and just going out and fighting, makes fighting a little more comfortable and easier to get into.
What are the Alaska crowds like?
They're good. They're pretty rowdy. They get loud. It's not, they're not very many people out there usually, but they get pretty loud for the amount of people, and it's always a good time. It's always a lot of fun because it's people. They're all pretty positive people and pretty good crowd. Not too negative to the fighters. They understand you get out there and you're fighting. It's we're not in there. They are. So they respect that. That's pretty cool.
So I guess I've always had this question. I didn't know it until now. What is Alaska's sports fan culture like in general? Like with having no professional football, baseball, basketball teams, and not nearly as much college sports to speak of. Like, what is the sports fan culture like there?
They're just everybody. You go to a like a party for a football party or something, and everybody has different like everybody has a different jersey. There's always like 50 different, like all the different teams from all around, because nobody has like a set team. But if I had to like give Alaska a team, I mean, I think a lot of people disagree that it's the Seattle Seahawks, and there are a lot of people that actually follow the Seahawks up there. Now that I think about it, but yeah, nobody really has a team. They all have like their favorite players, and they just kind of follow them, kind of thing. From what I've gathered.
So are a lot of people in Alaska generationally, like people in their families have been in Alaska for a while, or is there a good mix of people that have come from other states?
Yeah, well, it kind of depends on where you're at. If you're in the bigger towns, you have people who are like, oh yeah, we've moved up here and this and that. And in the villages, it's usually like the teachers and stuff, and nurses and doctors and stuff, like who are not really from Alaska. But mainly Alaska is just people who've been there for a long time. Well, the majority of people I know have been up there for forever, basically.
That's with teachers and doctors. Don't I feel like I've seen a lot of things like Alaska gives a lot of like grants to people to go like to a certain area and like live there and do like 2 years of being a doctor at a certain hospital.
Yeah, they get certain benefits and stuff. I would think, because they're basically leaving civilization to go to a village with the worst internet, or no internet. Sometimes like a lot of places have no running water, nothing. So it's they have to do a lot to get teachers up there and get people up there. And Alaska's one of those places. It's great if you embrace it. If you're just kind of fighting it, then it's gonna be rough.
I can imagine. Well, so are you training for do you have a fight set up that's coming, or are you still waiting on that?
No fight news or anything yet. I'm still waiting for a fight. But I'm staying at this point. I'm just like, I have to stay ready, because seeing Andre and like Ludwig and Gilmore, seeing them, I'll get those short notice fights. I'm like, I'm gonna be ready. If the UFC wants to call me up, put me on Volt's card, I mean, that'd be great.
I mean, yeah, like Gilmore is a great example. I mean, that was, an opportunity he got at the last second as well. And he, got to be on that card, and it either one didn't go to his liking, but I think a lot of people in a very short time kind of got behind that guy and got behind his story. And if I see him again, I'm definitely rooting for him.
Yeah, he actually, it's cool seeing him go out there, and he looked a lot more ready than being in the house, because on the house he showed up the day before, 2 days before the before the fight, and like it was weird, because I felt I really wanted to see like how he did, like without that that kind of stress, because he came into the house, nobody knew who he was, the Ortega guys, we didn't, so we're all just like, whatever. You just kind of push him to the side for the first couple of days, and it was he had to stay in the same room as Gilbert. So he, just before he fought him, that's kind of weird. He showed up in the house, and he had to go stay with the guy he's fighting, like sleep 5 feet away from him. Yeah, it was just cool to see him go out there and fight with Andre, and he did, actually, I thought he did great.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really tough fight to be ready for on short notice, but like if I see him from that's the power of the Ultimate Fighter. And for a guy that was only got to be on it for a much shorter time than the rest of the cast members, that's still something I'm really going to remember about that guy. And I'm going to root for him to be on cards. I'm going to root for him to win.
Oh yeah, definitely. I want to see more Michael Gilmore. Maybe I could get in there and fight him. Who knows?
Definitely want to see more Aaron Phillips. We have established that. So without a fight set, what are your goals for the next 365 days?
My goals for the next 365 days, take it day by day, man. I'm at these good gyms now, the Gracie Barra gyms. I'm trying to make it out to the Woodlands more often, see Ricky and train at that gym. And I'm training at Champions right now, and it's everything's good. I'm just learning every day. I'm just because I've never had formal jiu-jitsu training or nothing before the show, so this is this is like my first introduction to an actual gym outside of Tough. And it's, I'm just learning so much. I'm taking it, one step at a time, and I'm just going in every day and just, getting the hours in as much as I can, just, before my next fight.
So you, I know that you say you hadn't watched The Ultimate Fighter before, but like, do you follow like major MMA like pretty closely, like, or because I get answers all over the board from people. There are people that say they don't watch the UFC like almost ever, and then there are people that say they never miss an event.
I follow it somewhat, I a lot more than I used to. After being in the house, I'm like, all right, now, I'm watching it whenever I can, kind of thing. But a lot of the times it's, I'm usually pretty busy, so it's hard to keep up with a lot of stuff. Like, it was blowing my mind that all the guys from the house, they kind of all knew each other, like heard of each other kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't know. Do you know this guy from he fought here? I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't even remember 90% of the promotions that are out there. And, like,
There's a lot of them now.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get out. And fight and make a name,
It's great. It's like MMA has grown so much, and it's such a universal language that of fighting, that like basketball and soccer now, almost every country, almost every state has their own promotion that is considered that promotion's or that place's top feeder, and you can name like a handful of prospects that have come out of almost anywhere now.
Yeah, it's definitely growing, and it's like, I don't know, it's crazy because I met Mitch on the show, and him and Brady too. They grew up like doing this kind of stuff, like they grew up MMA. I just jumped into it at 20 when I was 27. I never gave MMA a real thought. I'd watch like GSP and Jose Aldo and stuff. But that was like before I ever considered fighting. Like, I was like, I never considered it. I was just like, yeah, it's not for me. But I ended up doing it now. I love it.
There's so many more people like that, because MMA is people. It's so much more generally accepted. There's so much more information about it to the public. But, people are training in it from the time they're kids on now. And, that's something that when people hear a story like yours really stands out, because I don't know. I think people definitely feel like they want to root for that a little bit more. I don't know what it is about that, but I think that definitely sticks out to people.
Oh yeah, me too. I don't know. I thought I was like really like, I was like, man, I really like wonder how people are gonna like talk about me on the show and this and that. And to my surprise, I got a lot of like really positive feedback, and I thought that was really cool. And I was like, oh yeah, people actually do kind of want to listen to my story and stuff. So yeah, so I'm still trying to figure out the social media stuff, so I get that to everybody still, because I want, I've never really considered myself like interesting before, and now it's like, oh, people actually kind of want to know where I'm coming from, and I think that's pretty cool, like especially with MMA, because it's like a culture now. It's like like you said, a culture.
It's crazy, because you definitely like being on a reality show, and especially The Ultimate Fighter. Like, I've seen seasons where dudes are telling stories, and like they think it's coming across really well, and in the background the production is edited in like goofy music, like do 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 do, like they're going to interviews, and guys are like, yeah, I don't really know what Marlon was talking about, man. That guy's crazy. He says he fought 54 people in a bar. And then you go home and you're like, I'm sure people are watching the show and they're like, oh, that's how it came off. But no, you had really positive reactions. I think people walked away from The Ultimate Fighter wanting to hear more about Aaron Phillips.
Oh yeah, and then there's a lot of people wondering what I'm eating today, kind of thing. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure every time I saw myself on the thing, I was eating something, and I was like, yeah, bro, you guys can't get me training, nothing. Like, you're just gonna get me eating food all the time. Like, people are gonna think
at one point I was like, that's Sean Aaron eating again. That's strange.
Just slurping down asparagus all the time, and I'm like, all right, the asparagus was good.
Oh but, God.
A lot of guys are good cooks in there, man. You couldn't not eat, and I was like, I had this little request list that we can, basically get anything we wanted. And so I was like, all right, cool. I'll just, put whatever. And there's just, yeah, I would eat it every day. Man, it was wild. It was a good time.
So since you've been paying attention more to the UFC, like, since the house and everything, are there any guys that have caught your attention that have been particularly fun to watch?
Um, there, there's a few. I can't really remember their names, but there's a few guys that on this last card that I was like, oh shit, like these guys are good, and it was. But I mean, then again, like it's hard for me to like watch, because I start watching and I'm like, I'll go work out real quick. Like I see them like they're there. I'm on the couch watching them. Like I'm gonna go lift a cow over my head or something. It's more of like it's kind of like harder to follow because I don't really want to. I just want to be like, all right, I want to get in shape. Yeah, like they're there. I need to get in better shape, and then whenever opponents come, that's when I'll watch. And like and it's different. um so it's like hard to follow, but I have been watching the 185 scene a lot closer. I like there's a lot of DWCs at this last, was it Tuesday?
Yes.
Yeah, like the Russian guy at Extreme Couture, man, that guy's tough. It's like guys like that. I'm watching guys like that, and I think that's really cool. I think he might be training with Ryder too if he's at Extreme, so that's pretty cool.
So, like, I know you said that you were looking, trying to stay ready for any opportunity that might come up. If an opportunity came up at 205 that they offer, would that be something that you'd be interested in?
I would definitely consider it. It's 205 isn't like crazy. I don't think it's like crazy. I've been feeling kind of like bigger, like like all right, and since I started lifting weights again, because before when I cut down to my first time cutting the 185, I was like, nah, I'm just done lifting weights. I do enough working out, because I'm over here running and doing my fight stuff, and lifting weights just felt like made that harder. But now that I'm like back into that, lifting weights, running, and doing that because I don't, I'm not working anymore, so it's all like full-time fight stuff, so I have time to do it. And yeah, I feel like we take it 205 if I really had to. The goal is to kind of 185, possibly 170 one day. But the goal is to kind of stay at 185 because that's where I feel the best. I'm just like, I feel fast, I feel strong, and it's not a totally grueling cut. So if they offered a 205, I wouldn't say I wouldn't take it. I'll definitely look it over.
So when you watch 185-pound fights now, because I get answers all over the board on this question too. There are people that watch, looking for opponents that they think would be good matchups for, and there are other guys that just watch to, keep up with the division and try to stay, in tune with what's going on in the sport. But is that something that you watch with an eye towards like, I'd love to fight that guy, or I think that'd be a great matchup and one that would really showcase my skills?
Yeah, there's a couple, but I wouldn't really like. There's just a few guys I like watching. I watched when we were on the show. We got to go to the fights one time. Volk brought us to the fights. He got us out of the house, and I saw he was on the Contender Series. I think he fought Al Mataval on the Contender Series, and then he fought the guy, he called himself the Iron Turtle.
Let's see. Tafon and Chukwi?
Yeah. I think he might. I think that was him that was fighting the. No, it might. Well, I don't know. But the Iron Turtle, man, I watched him fight, and I got to see him live and stuff, and I was like, yeah, that guy looks. He just looks like a fun guy to fight. Me personally, I think like, man, he looks fun to fight. Not necessarily that like do I think I could beat him? Yeah, of course, I think I can beat anybody because you got to have that mindset. And but I watched him and I was like, he just seems like somebody who would be like fun to fight stylistically, and just someone I would love to fight one day, hopefully.
185 is a great weight class right now, and that's a division that has benefited so much from the guys in the top 10 not going dormant, to preserve a position. Like that's a problem that they saw at welterweight for a long time, but the guys at middleweight have been so active, and Derek Brunson is a guy who has really seen his stock rise as a result. He looked great in his last handful of fights. I thought, and that's a really underappreciated guy. But then in the rankings behind him, there's a slew of prospects in a mad dash to the top that, it's a really really active, fun division that's seeing the pieces worked out in front of us right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like 185. It's like everybody's fighting. I feel like everybody's like, we gotta get to the top. Like they're racing there, and everybody's active. Nobody just kind of sits there, and you don't hardly ever see too many arguing about like people fighting. It's other than like, hey, I want Izzy, kind of thing. Everybody's like, hey, well, I want Izzy next, I want him next. That's the only argument really is that. But so people are going out there and they're really putting themselves out there, and that's why I really like 185. Is because it's it is active. So I feel like I can get a fight there, and if I do get in the UFC, I can I could stay active throughout the year and not have to worry about being stagnant or getting rusty.
Lot of hunger at that weight class. So Aaron, before we go today, any sponsors, people that you want to shout out, any social media accounts you want to shout out, anything else you would like people to know, or anything else you want to say? The floor is yours.
I'd like to thank Dodge Sports first of all. I'd like to thank all my sponsors. Don't necessarily put you guys on my social medias too much. I'll get to it. It's just that I'd like to thank everybody who's behind me, really. And that's all I got.
All right. Well, folks, this has been another interlude episode of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. This has been Brady Grove here with professional middleweight fighter and Tough 29 middleweight contestant Aaron Phillips. Aaron, thank you so much for being here today. It was a great conversation. I wish you all the best of luck and health moving forward up to your next fight.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. It was a good time.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's it for this week. We'll be back with business as usual next week.